So did you have any discussions during lunchtime, and if so, were there any questions from what we've discussed so far? All right. Is that a yes or a no? No, okay. Oh.
I have one question.
Okay, honey child, just take the mic. Mm-hmm.
So that's about the harmful and helpful actions, and it's like, to me it appears that sometimes when I'm doing something I find is virtuous, that at the same time as I have at least the impression that I have a motivation to benefit others, at the same time I can also feel the motivation to be approved. So can I have two motivations at the same time?
Yeah. It's impossible to go from the ancient habit of having attachment as your motivation to suddenly perfectly having altruism. It's just impossible. It's like going from being a skinny guy to looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger in one day. It's a gradual thing. So with your mind, it's the same. So you've got to start by having the new aspiration. And it's very small. Of course, still the drive to be approved of and all this is very, very deep, and you're going to be highly advanced before you get rid of that. But the more you put in the new motivation, the more that stabilizes you and then helps you sometimes not do the dumb thing that you would have done before. It helps you stabilize. And you can always do it. You always attempt to develop it. So you do it every day, and that keeps getting stronger. And then it counteracts the other one. Slowly, this other one gets stronger, and this one gets weaker. You understand?
Yeah.
You just got to be aware of your mind, and don't curse yourself for it. It's inevitable. The mind's quite complex. There's lots of things happening, but you've got to have that pure intention, that pure motivation, all the time. Speaking it, saying it. Reminding yourself. Absolutely.
So even in the same action, there can be both motivations.
I thought I answered it just now.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
I mean, I'm not being rude. I'm meaning, if you ask me again, it sounds like you didn't understand what I said.
Yeah, no,
You do.
I think I understand.
You can't suddenly. Do you see what I'm saying? If you can't go from one ancient habit to a new one, making it perfect.
Yeah.
It's impossible. It's got to still be there. Just like your flappy, fat body is still there, even when you're practicing doing your push-ups. But slowly doing the push-ups every day counteracts the flabby body, and you get strong. But it takes time to go from one to the other. But you've got to start. You've got to start somewhere with the thought. Remember all the time.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Yes. Mm-hmm.
I've been thinking about the karma and the natural order, and the whole idea about not killing sentient beings in that. It seems to me that we're on a planet where that's the natural order, where polar bears in Alaska, they don't really have any choice but to eat fish because there's nothing else. And if they don't have a choice, it doesn't seem to me like it can be the result of karma, or they can change their karma. And I also tend to, rather than think of sentient beings, I think of life. So that I see like plants in that not necessarily having a mind, but what we all share in common is life. So I'm wondering, since you're talking about Buddhism as being scientific or logical, it seems to me that there's a logical order to our world where the food chain is a part of it, and that's the ecology and the cycle. How do you align that with karma?
There's nothing wrong. That's an interpretation, isn't it? Based upon the materialist world's view of how things work. Isn't it? Wouldn't you agree? That's a particular philosophical view that interprets something. It's an interpretation of something, isn't it? Like this food cycle business. It's an interpretation. Okay, so it's not wrong. You're not incorrect to say that polar bears eat these, which eat those, which eat those. You can build up a very detailed picture from all of this. It's true. But what we're looking at with karma is, why in the first place are you a polar bear? What is a polar bear? What causes you to be a polar bear? What causes you to be born in a body, in an environment that compels you to eat fish? That's the point of karma. Given the status quo of being a polar bear, you're right, they don't have a choice. But the polar bear is a sentient being, just like you are. It's born with its tendencies, just like you are. It's born in an environment due to its tendencies, just like you are. So that's karma. So therefore it is responsible. Every time it goes and kills fish, it's harming sentient beings. It has ignorance in its mind. It doesn't know it's harming. And the habit propels it to keep doing it. It looks good to it, so it keeps doing it. That's called karma. It's a natural law. Not a natural order, a natural law. It occurs. And so the polar bear is creating negative karma all the time. Of course it is.
I guess I realize now when I hear you say that I have an assumption. And my assumption is that we are evolving.
That's right.
And if the polar bear has no choice but to eat fish, does it get a choice to evolve?
Right. So what's evolution mean? What do you mean by evolve?
That I'm going towards a clear mind, towards enlightenment.
Who's this we is going towards this?
I am.
You're one, and there's 5 billion humans, and there's countless trillions upon trillions of others. What are they doing?
I think the purpose of life is to evolve.
That might be true, but look at the evidence. Are they doing it?
Yes.
Oh, I see. So polar bear by killing fish is evolving, is it? Hitler was evolving by killing all those people. He was evolving, was he? Was he going forward or going back? What do you think? By killing?
Well,
by killing, are you going forward or back? Is it positive or negative? Is killing positive or negative? Is it a harmful action or a beneficial action in general?
I want to go back to the comment with Sandy and the...
no, answer my question first. Is killing in general? No. Is in general
yes.
killing negative?
Yes.
And so there was Hitler, on the evidence of it, being behind the killing of an awful lot of humans.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
And would you agree that if you read his philosophy and his reasons for doing it, he was probably quite deluded? On an ordinary sense, wouldn't you say it's deluded?
Absolutely.
So therefore, would you say he's going back or he's going forward? What would you think?
I say he personally was going backwards.
We're only talking about personal. So then there's billions and billions of sentient beings, each with a mind, each experiencing the fruits of their own actions in the past, each in a life that they've created, each got tendencies that they have got because of having done it before. So based on that, and then based upon the evidence of looking, I think you'd have to deduce that the vast majority of all sentient beings are going back, not forward.
I don't, though. I see...
Wait a minute. You just agreed that Hitler, by killing, doing harmful things, is going back. So
Absolutely,
then, okay,
I did.
so the polar bear is killing. So
yes.
Is killing positive?
I don't agree that the polar bear is going back.
Is killing positive or negative?
It's negative.
So the polar bear, due to its past negative karma, is born in a life where it's got a mind as thick as a post that doesn't know how to make the choice. And so even more than that, more worse is it's born in an environment where it has no choice but to kill fish. Right. That is the result of negative karma. So it follows that tendency to harm sentient beings. So would you not say, on the basis of that presentation, the polar bear is also going back? And how is it different? If Hitler's going back, why not the polar bear? What's the difference?
Okay.
Wait, listen carefully. They're both sentient beings. They both have mind. They both have karmic tendencies. They're both in the situation that they created, and they're both doing harm. Why is the polar bear not going back, but Hitler going back? What's the difference, do you think? What's the difference between those two people, those two sentient beings?
Those two sentient beings. I think Hitler has a choice.
No, who said he has a choice? Who told you that?
I believe
Why
that.
does he have a choice? Why? Who?
Because
on what basis?
He's in an environment that allows him to make choices.
Who said he's got a choice? Excuse me. If you have a strong tendency if I think of a fisherman right now who's got a strong tendency to kill, and they think fishing is good.
Right.
And I go to that fisherman and I tell him that you could have a choice, you know, because fish don't like dying. And he will laugh at me and continue to fish. So he doesn't have a choice. Excuse me, wait, careful. Just because the possibility is there to not fish doesn't mean that a person has that capacity to see it. Polar bear or fisherman, from that point of view, is similar. The one saving thing for a person who is a human, they do have, in theory, the capacity to make choices. But look at the human world. Look at the human world and the terrible harm we do to each other. Because we are thick as posts and because we have tendencies and we think they're right and we follow them. And therefore we don't see the harm we're doing, and you could argue we virtually don't have a choice.
I wouldn't.
Excuse me, then, if you do have a choice, and if you're intelligent and rational, what would it be that would prevent you from making that choice? What would it be? If you do, having a choice means there are two options right in front of you right now, and you have the possibility to say, will I kill fish or will I not kill fish? That's what choice means. Now you check the last time you got angry. Just careful, check, remember the last time you suddenly said those words. Did you sit there beforehand and say, will I choose to be angry or will I choose to be patient? I think I'm going to choose to be angry. You didn't. It just happened, didn't it? And you're standing, careful, listen, careful, careful. Do you recognize that? That sometimes you just do it without realizing. And then afterwards you're sitting there thinking, oh my God, what happened? Here I went again, the same old problem. Do you recall ever that happening in your life?
Yes,
one
but the
step
last
at
time
one
it
step
didn't.
at a time.
The last time it
one
didn't
step
happen
at
to
a
me.
time, please. Do you recall that happening in your life?
Absolutely.
Do you overeat sometimes? Do you get lazy sometimes?
Yes.
Do you lie?
Yes.
So that if you know you have choice, how come you're not Buddha now? How come you're not Buddha if it's such an easy thing to make choices? As we humans think it is. Why aren't you Buddha right now? Why don't you, once you make the choice, say, that's it, I'm finished overeating, I'm finished getting angry, I'm going to decide to get a Buddha, and I'm going off to the mountains, never eat and sleep again, and I'm going to become a Buddha. How come you didn't make that choice? What is stopping you? What is stopping you?
I do not have the skills at this point to do it.
You don't have the ability to make that choice because all the
I might have the ability.
You
Well,
do
no, I don't.
not
You're
have the
right, I don't.
ability
You're
right
right.
now to
You're
make
right.
that choice because all the conditions are not in your mind allowing you to do it. Same with Hitler. Same with the polar bear. The difference between Hitler and the polar bear, Hitler in theory had the intelligent mind that if he could have, he would have maybe made a choice. But karma takes care, sweetheart. We are propelled by the force of our own habits. You might as well say we don't have much choice. That's why we have such compassion for ourselves and others. And when we are like a miracle in able to be sitting in a situation like this because we've made the decision to do it, we can even hear that maybe we can make choices. And then we start the struggle of beginning to make those choices, and look how difficult it is. So, what's your point now?
So by your criteria, people that are doing well live longer. People on Earth...
I didn't say that.
It's part of the 8 things that are the 10, if you do this, then this is likely to happen, you'll live a shorter life. If you kill people, it said you're more likely to live a shorter life.
Yeah, so what's the point here?
That human beings on Earth are living longer.
What's your point? It's another whole...
It's a logical argument.
Sweetheart, can you please stay on one topic? We've hardly
I am
begun to
on the
discuss the previous
talking-
one, and now you're going to another one.
I'm on the same topic.
Well, it's another discussion for me, so what's your main point?
My point
Tell me your
is
essential
that
point.
people are evolving, that people are, by my observation, but even by the criteria that you're using,
So
that
you think
people
individuals are evolving. So people who lie, steal, kill, are violent, dropping bombs, are terrorists, all these humans, they're evolving.
yes,
They make the choice to be harmful and kill, and that's called evolution.
they're making it less often, and they're
Oh, you think
fewer,
so?
Yes,
You think actually individuals do that?
yes.
Well, I'm very happy for your mind. I'm
And-
glad you see it like this.
My evidence is, and can I give you my evidence?
That the 6 billion humans on this earth are improving in their lives and going towards enlightenment. Every time you get depressed, you're going towards enlightenment. Every time you get angry, you're going towards enlightenment. Every time you lie, steal, kill, get rage, and delight when people suffer, you're going towards enlightenment. I'd like you to think about that.
May I give you my argument?
No, I'd like you to think about it.
Why can't
There's
I
no
give you
time,
my
it's
argument?
20 past 2, we spent 20 minutes
Okay,
on this topic
that
and
I
I've got to
accept.
leave very soon.
Okay. I'll think about it.
Good, I'm very happy. Yes, the gentleman over there.
If I understand you, when you were discussing about the question about ritual earlier this
Yeah.
morning and about just do it, and eventually you get
No,
to a
no, no, I
different
didn't
level?
say that. No, I did not say that. I said choose to do it when
Choose
you're
to do
ready.
it. Right.
You might leave it on the back burner for 10 years. It's your decision.
Okay. I was making a leap to something else.
Yeah.
If I had the affirmation, let's say, or mantra, I am my mind stream, I'm not my body. And I just worked on that
Yeah.
to prepare for death.
Yes.
Over and
Yes.
over. And every
Right.
time I just had cues, remembrances to keep it in my mind. And every time I met someone, I said it, and thought it rather, not said it. Would that, in fact, eventually lead me to, even if it's still right now a mental construct, I've heard this, I've read this for 20 years, and only today am I actually beginning to grasp
I
this, by the
understand,
way.
yeah.
This is very
Sure.
startling for me.
I understand.
Very thick as a post, as you
Yes,
say.
right.
And will that, I mean, I don't know, the question is really, in contemplating that and thinking it, does that sink in and help?
Sure. Like everything, that's how it works. It's
Is that
one
how it
way
works? All right.
of saying, how you practice. Everything exists on the tip of the wish, the thought. The thought is the first step. It's like cognitive therapy, you know. It's true, really is true. You don't just sort of bash yourself with it, but you remind yourself 1,000 times a day that the person isn't the main cause of your suffering, that it is due to your karma, that my mind is the main thing, that I'm not my body. All these different things, all these little things you're talking to yourself about. Slowly you get used to that, and that becomes the picture. So that then determines your behaviour and your actions. Absolutely. That's how it works.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks. Yes.
I want to thank you for your presentation this weekend, first of all.
Oh, okay. Pleasure.
Would you help me unpack a situation?
Sure.
Some years ago, I had a friend who lived in a nearby home, and she said she'd be home, and I called her, and she didn't answer, and she didn't answer. So I think I remember I had anger, and I went over to her door, and she was bleeding profusely from her nose. And I said, "You are going to the hospital." And I bundled her up and I took her to the hospital, and she in fact was truly bleeding out. And she was there 12 days before they got it stopped. And she and her family contribute me to saving her life. Where that doesn't seem to fit for me. Is there merit in this, or is
I'm
this...
a bit confused. You go to her door, you knock on the door, what happened? What did you, I missed some
And
steps there.
she was bleeding profusely.
But I didn't understand the bit why you said you were angry. I can't get the point. What happened?
Oh, because I had called her several times and she didn't answer the phone.
Oh, I see. So you rang her up, she didn't answer, and then you got mad at her, and you went over to her house to get mad at her. Is that what you did?
And then I saw her bleeding.
So then you, and okay, that's fine.
So I'm very confused
so then you
about-
could say that's a kind of, it's a really good kind of, it's, you'd almost say the main thing happening there is that she had created in the past the karma to be helped by you so strongly that even it took you getting angry to end up being a catalyst to save her life. So that's, for you, yeah, the anger was negative, and even your reason for going to her house was you were mad at her, you know. But then it quickly changed. Then you helped her. That's fine. So that's a bit of sort of, we'd call it serendipity in the West, but that's a bit of very strong karma she must have created in the past to have you there in time to help her and save her life. But for you, even the catalyst turned out to be a bad thing, you know. That's okay. But then it's fine. You redeem yourself from that. It's all right. You learn from it. It's okay. But
So
that mainly is about her very good karma. She would have died
So there was
otherwise.
no merit for me in
Of course there was. I mean, sweetheart, there's one action called anger, then the rest of it is help called saving her life. I mean, you can't rate those two things the same. They're both different things, aren't they? You did many things there. So, you know,
That's
it's
why
not,
I
a,
was
it's not a
confused.
blanket situation, is it? There are
No.
many different things happening. Part of the time you're angry, and the rest of the time you're being helpful. The anger was a catalyst, that's all, for you to end up being in the right place at the right time. So then you learn from that. It's okay.
Thank you
That's
very
fine.
much.
Rejoice that you saved her life. Because you must have saved it she must have saved your life in the past, which is how come she had the merit for you to save hers. So think of it in those terms as well. So how fortunate. So then it also humbles you because you realise there are always explanations for things and how we jump in and have our own self-centred interpretation. Like, poor me, she's not answering, you know. So but straight away you learn from this. So it's humbling to be, before we jump in and make a conclusion, you never know what the explanation is. So it's a good lesson, isn't it? So it's a good thing altogether. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, my question is in this regard. When you create your conditions, you create the conditions in the past for what's happening to you now, right?
Just
For
like a
what's
garden.
happening.
Yeah,
Okay.
you put all the things in the past, and then your
No.
fruit comes. Yep.
For example, like a clear example, say somebody close to me has a terrible accident or happening in their lives. Is that it has to do with my karma? Like am I liberating karma, or is
Sorry,
that
start
person
again.
liberating
Start again.
karma?
What's the story?
The story is, say somebody I love very much has an accident.
Yeah.
Is going through a rough time. Okay? Now, that person created the conditions in the past to be living that in that moment. But in regards to me, if I feel like of course it's attachment, but if I feel compassion, or if I feel in some way affected by that
That's right.
event.
You will be. You'll have compassion. That's right. An opportunity like her, for you to be useful. So the question is?
So the question is that person, so that person created that event because of things they did in the
Okay,
past.
yeah,
What
if-
does it have to do with me?
Well, are you involved in it?
If I'm not involved,
Are
just
you
watch
involved
it.
in this?
Well, emotionally,
You're there.
yes.
No,
yes.
you're there. You're in the scenario.
Okay, yeah.
So then whatever your input is the result of whatever you've done. I mean, whatever it is that you can call your experience, there are causes for that. Whatever an individual's experience is that you look at, there have to be causes for it. That's all. It's kind of simple. Whatever your experience is, there are causes for it. And then you use it to help you develop. There have to be causes for there to be a, you can say the big main tree is there, which is the big event, then you have these little kind of sprouts popping up on the bottom. Well, they're all they've got causes too. You're just a little event here. The main event is your sick person. But you're there in front of it. The person's a friend of yours. You're doing things to help. So there are causes for you to be there at that time seeing that. Of course there are. There always have to be causes for whatever there is that exists.
And is that because of attachment that you feel that way, or that I
Because of
feel
what?
that way?
That's for you to find out. Look into your mind.
Okay.
Depends on your mind. Someone else? Yes, Rachel. Over here. Yep.
I'm confused with the relationship between the mind and the brain when it comes
Mind
to
and brain, okay.
when it comes to memory. Yesterday you spoke that memory is in the mind.
Memory is a function of mind,
A
isn't it?
function
To
of mind.
recall, to remember, to know what you're doing from moment to moment, to keep track of what you're doing to moment, which is called mindfulness, but it's the capacity to have keep your memory on track so you don't forget what you're doing. And then secondly, to recall certain things. We call that memory, don't we? Yeah. That's your mind, yes. That's a function of your mind, which is not physical, yeah. That's right.
So when science determines that somebody is losing their mind,
Yeah.
and they can physically see that in the brain.
No problem. When you cut your hand off, you can't touch things, can you? Sensory consciousness of touch is a function of your consciousness, mind, which is not physical, that functions through the medium of fingers. Cut your hand off, your mind can't have an experience. So if the piece of the brain's missing, that part of your mind can't function. There's no contradiction. Do you see? It's just a way of saying it. Your consciousness exists in dependence upon a working brain. How can you have tactile consciousness if you have no fingers? So how can you have nose consciousness if you cut your nose off? So consciousness is not nose, but the capacity to smell, which is a function of mind, function through the medium of the physical. Well, conceptuality functions in relationship to the brain. But I mean, I've heard about people who've had half their brain cut out and they're working fine. So that alone, if you can find one example of one person who has a bit of brain missing but works fine, then that immediately throws into the toilet the view that the mind is the brain. I mean, straight away, there's proof. Can you hear? It's just getting your head around it.
Yeah. A year and a half ago, you told me when we talked about this before, so I've been thinking about it for a while, that if you watch your mind, you can basically never lose your memory. Because I asked you if somebody that's been meditating for years can get Alzheimer's. I don't know if you remember me asking you that, but
So what's the question?
I've been thinking about it for a long time, and it just still doesn't
What's the question,
make
darling?
sense to
What's
me.
the question?
I mean, how, in relation to Alzheimer's, how is that possible to happen for somebody that meditates for years and years? I mean, how can that not be possible? I mean, if something happens physically with your brain and you've been watching your mind for years, can you really counteract that with meditation? Getting Alzheimer's, for example.
Of course you can. You can cure cancer. You can heal your body. Of course you can. Of course you can. By changing your mind, by purifying. If you take the hypothesis that you have a thing called a consciousness, this beginningless river of mental moments that has imprints in it from the things that you have done in past lives with body and speech, that leaves imprints that then ripen and are now is manifesting in called Rachel's mind. And then due to past killing, which is what you use your body for, you leave imprints of negativity and harm in your mind. One way those negative seeds can ripen is in the present, in Rachel's getting sick. her body not working properly. One of the karmic results of killing is to get sick, right? Okay, so you can purify those karmic seeds of that past killing, which are now causing you to get sick. You can clean up that karma. Well, one of the results could very easily be that you heal yourself. Because there is this intimate relationship at a subtler level, this is how they talk in Tibetan medicine, between the mind and the physical energies. So when your mind is polluted, you pollute your body. When you purify your mind, you can purify your body. The other way around. When you purify your body, you can give yourself the basis to help purify your mind. So they're utterly interdependent. They're finding now that people's brains are radically changing simply by virtue of sitting down thinking compassionate thoughts. Just thinking differently changes your physical body. There's evidence now. That's why they talk about the mind being plastic, which is a brand new concept for the West. Are you hearing me? Oh, simple. Your mind's the boss. Oh, yes. Okay. Microphone, please. Over here. Yes.
So I was really struck a second ago when you were talking about choice and the assumption that there is choice for certain individuals in their actions. And so when do we have choice? I mean, I could have chosen not to come today and hear all this.
Right. So exactly.
When is there that, and when do you have that responsibility?
It seems to me, we can talk, I mean, we talk about choice, I think, in a very abstract way. We even talk about it when we talk about the Christian idea of free will, which assumes that humans have it. And then on that assumption, we then say, when we see a person who killed somebody, oh, they chose to kill, therefore they are evil. This is the way we talk. But that's what I'm trying to get at with her. What's your name? Linda. With Linda. When you try to look at one of the, the last time you're angry or jealous or you followed one of your old habits, excuse me, it is a joke to say we chose to do it. Meaning, if there's a very strong habit in your mind, whether it's to play piano or get angry, you're just going to follow it instinctively. When you're good at piano, when you've imprinted yourself with the habit to play piano, think of it like this. You put your hands on the piano. You don't choose each finger to go to each note. Now I'll put it on the middle C. You just go brrrr, because you've trained yourself to perfection. You're beyond choice. A Buddha is a person who is spontaneously perfectly wise and loving. They don't choose to be loving any longer. Because you don't need to, because you're now perfectly loving, perfectly wise, because you've trained it to perfection. Right now, we have trained ourselves with anger and jealousy and fears and drama. So effectively, to that extent, we're not choosing in that rational way to get angry, jealous or depressed. You don't even see an option, you just follow it. Then, of course, because we do have an intelligent mind, and we can put two and two together, which the lion or the polar bear can't do, when you do hear something that differs from your habits, you can go, oh, that sounds interesting, that sounds possible. Yeah, maybe I'll give that a go. That's an intelligence that enables you to see maybe the things you're doing might be negative because you can step back from it. That is one of the marvellous things about a human being. It doesn't follow. It will happen for you, though. Many fishermen never hear ever once the thought that killing is not good. Or if they do, they don't even hear it. Not possible. Because the habit is so strong to kill. So then you can't say they have choice.
And that's the karma.
That's the power. Karma is like a motor. Karma is habit. So the habit that propels you to play piano is what causes you to do it instinctively. Same with anger and killing. So effectively you can argue when you've got something deeply habituated in your mind, you're not choosing to do it. You've trained yourself to the point where you're beyond choice. We're trying to aim to be like this with the good stuff. Right now, look at us with our little old rubbish. We mightn't be Hitlers, but we all run about being depressed and angry and never even think we have a choice. And even if we do, look how painful it is to follow it. Because everything in us is pushing us in that direction. Do you see?
Yeah. So for one particular person, what they may be striving for at the end of their life is just that they actually hear the choice. They may not...
Sorry?
That depending on where someone is because of their past deeds,
yes,
that in terms of moving forward, for them it may just be hearing the choice for the first time.
Yeah, many of us. I mean, you know, it was a certain point in my life, this life, when I heard that anger was not useful. Anger was harmful. Anger was not good for you. If I'd heard that even a year before, I would have laughed at you, told you to back off and mind your own business, because I thought it was good. So at some point I heard something, and then it triggered. That was the right timing for me. It was the right nourishment on this other seed in my mind that was able to be nourished by it. But just like, a certain fisherman, you can say, many people here have killed fish, but now you've stopped. Another person who hears it thinks, what a ridiculous idea, and walks out the room. Because they're not, the seeds aren't ready to be nourished. Do you see?
Thank you.
Yes.
Continue on the karma. Is
Yes.
karma transferable? If my sister got cancer, am I somehow responsible for that? Is somehow my
Okay, think
negative
of the
karma?
analogy of we've all our life is our garden. So I've got my garden, and you've got your garden, right? So I can have weeds in my garden. But just because I come visit you every day doesn't mean I'm going to get your weeds. I've got to plant my weeds in my garden, so I'll get weeds too. So you can't get someone else's cancer, because someone's cancer is the personal karmic result of their personal actions. If you also get cancer, it's because of you also have a similar seed in your mind. It's not because you got it from someone else.
So
That's impossible.
everybody is responsible for their own
Whatever it is
karma.
that arises, yes.
How about your children? Is part of
Even
your karma?
that, and even this, even you could have children. Let's say you have a DNA tendency or a genetic tendency to get a certain illness, like say cancer. Then I created the cause to be born to you as my mother due to our strong karmic history. And that means I also created, and I get your DNA, which is a physical condition. That means you didn't give me cancer. My cancer's not from the DNA. That's the physical condition that I, due to my past karma, created the cause to get born into.
Oh, okay.
Do you see? So, I mean, many people who've got a tendency to get cancer have children who don't get cancer. Because it can be that you'd have the similar thing. It doesn't follow.
Okay.
Because it's not physical, finally.
One last one then. Is there then no accidental death then if we
No
believe
such
in
thing.
karma?
No. Of course
So,
not. No such thing as random anything. Like in your garden, you know that whatever is popping up over the earth is necessarily the fruit of a seed. There's always a cause of whatever's in your garden, or whatever occurs in a person's life. It's the fruit of a seed.
So Mississippi River, the death
Yes.
there is
Yes.
no accident then?
Of course not. Not in that sense. There's
Oh,
no
okay.
accident. We can talk in a short-term sense.
Okay.
That suddenly yesterday there was, an accident happened and the bridge broke. But in the final sense of looking at the fundamental cause of why there's no such thing as random, it's impossible.
Okay.
If there's a law, then everything that occurs has to fit with that law. There can't be exceptions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to ask if there's any notion of collective karma in understanding karma that
Sure.
perhaps
How
we
would you define collective karma?
well, perhaps we suffer from in a generalized kind of way because of proliferation of weapons, violence in the street, racial prejudices within our country historically.
Yes.
And so is there a sense of collective karma that we all
Yeah, if you think
experience?
about it, collective karma means, we're always walking around in groups, aren't we? We do everything in groups, don't we? All beings do. So then you obviously you can be part of a group one day that when you hear about, I think, for example, I remember when Timothy McVeigh got killed, people held parties at midnight to cheer all over the country. So you could say they all collectively created a very strong karma together to experience a similar kind of result together in the future. People in an airplane that crashes, they might never have met in the past. The September 11 group never have met in the past. But that group of people created the cause together in some past life to experience that collectively. People who all win a lottery might never have met each other, collectively experience the fruit of generosity. So, of course, everything we do is in groups. But a group is made up of individual minds, isn't it? That do things together. So we can do things together. Of course we can. And we can get the karmic result together. But there can be a group of people, let's say, 10 people sitting there having a party, but one person in the group doesn't rejoice about Timothy McVeigh, so they won't get the result. Do you see what I'm saying?
This might be a little bit far-fetched, but is it possible that because we all see that bottle the same way, could that be because of a collective karma?
It is, you're exactly right. That's the point. This is exactly right. We've all created the cause to be what we call human, living in a certain place at a certain time where a blue bottle appears to us in a certain way. It's a broader sense, yeah. Absolutely, that is exactly right.
Then that bottle could be non-existent inherently, but we see it
in a similar way
In a
because we have the
similar
karma.
way,
Yeah.
and that would be
So
with
that just
everything.
proves the point about how things can also be cultural. But you know, if somebody in our country walks into a posh party and takes their shoes off, they're considered rude. But if you leave your shoes on in Tibet, you'd be considered rude. So it shows there's a collective karma called Tibetans and a collective karma called Australians or Americans, and there's a collective karma called human that we all, if you know what a bottle is. You know, some people have never heard of a bottle, you know. So yeah, it's collective karma, absolutely.
Well, then
Absolutely.
logically, then, therefore, everything could be an illusion.
What?
Then logically, everything could be an illusion.
Everything is an illusion, not could. Our minds have all made it up. But for so long that we now give it self-existence. Like the Lama said, we're like children. We draw a lion. We make things. We make things up and then we believe in them. We believed in it for so long. We've believed in them for so long. That's what makes them look self-existent to us. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Not far-fetched at all. Yes, yes, and yes. Okay, over him too. Okay, coming.
Thank
Yes,
you.
darling.
I'd like to ask a question outside of the realm of this earth.
Sure, sweetheart.
What is the Buddhist perspective on life, be it human? Let's just stick
Sure.
with the human aspect
Yes,
of it.
yes.
Beyond this
Yes,
environment.
absolutely. Yes. Good. Thank you very much. So, okay. So, stepping right back here and looking at the big picture again. I like the big picture. You've got trillions upon countless trillions of minds. They say in Buddhism there's not an atom of space where you won't find sentient beings, minds, semchens, mind possessors. And there's all these different ways in which minds manifest as individual beings. You've got your whole spectrum, you know, we mentioned this yesterday. Were you here yesterday? Okay, we talked about gods, remember? God realms. They're sentient beings who are experiencing, as a result of a lot of virtue, experiencing enormous bliss and joy and fun, and their physical energies are quite subtle. Then, okay, let me go back a second and say something here. This will help. In this model of the mind and energy that they talk about in Tantra, which is actually the most advanced teachings, but I find this quite helpful, it's quite simple. You've got, like we said, each individual mind, we've got gross consciousness, which for us means living at this gross conceptual level, with this, in this case, a very gross physical energy that goes with it. Look at it, it's quite gross, a big bag of bones and all the other stuff that's inside there, isn't it? So the functioning of our conceptuality and sensory consciousness is dependent upon the existence of this physical body. And so this is the base. So once this body collapses, the conceptuality and sensory collapses too. And that happens every time you go to sleep, but it happens when you die. Then the subtle consciousness, you've got the subtler physical energies, and the Tibetan doctors can feel your winds and your chakras and all this business, blah, blah, blah. You know, this subtler physical, and they're very detailed about that in Tantra and indeed in Tibetan medicine. And then you've got the very subtle consciousness with a very subtle wind energy. So at the time of your death, when everything kind of collapses down, 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 what's your name? Linda. Everything collapses down, you get down to the fundamental building blocks of Linda, and then where the potential is for the next person, and that's the very subtle consciousness and very subtle wind energy that's physical, that's the basis of the four elements, because they talk in this model, like in medieval times, about the physical world made up of the four elements, right? So there's the wind energy and the very subtle consciousness, and that's the building blocks. This is indestructible, it's always existed, moment by moment, impermanent, changing from moment to moment, and is the mind. Here is the mind is like the repository of all the karmic imprints that you've ever put in there in your mind. That's where they're stored, the habits, the tendencies, and all this. Okay, like the programming. So then, depending on what occurs at the time of your death, let's say killing karma ripens from the habit of killing the rats and roaches and not working on your mind and not caring and being mean to others and all like this. Then the strong habit of killing, which is one of the most intense, will ripen as a cause for your mind to go on autopilot to, let's say, the lion mummy's womb. And then you get born, then the tendencies arise to fit that body, which is a lion's mind, aggression, attachment, all these things, you know, with a body that goes with it. I mean, you try ripping the guts out of buffaloes for breakfast with these nails. Forget it. These hands are made for affection, His Holiness says. It's the fruit of virtue, we've got hands like this, you know. But look at lions, you know. Those claws aren't made for affection. They're made for very efficiently ripping out the guts of buffaloes for breakfast, isn't it? So that's due to the actions of that lion. They create their body, blah, blah, blah. So then you've got your God realms, you've got your human realms, you've got your animal realms. You've got what they call spirits, and that's not a positive thing in Buddhism. It's a very suffering realm of existence of disembodied beings who are super, 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 super intensely suffering. So the main propensity of the suffering of the animal realms is enormous ignorance, ego grasping. The main propensity of the suffering of the spirits is incredible attachment, like bottomless pit, 1,000,000 times more intense grasping attachment, craving. They've got subtle energies as well, subtle physical energy, but they're not pleasant beings. The gods can be very powerful and very kind. It can be very, like, you know, even some of what we like guardian angel type thing. Lots of these beings can be very positive. They can be very helpful, these gods. They're not out of samsara yet. And they've got subtle light bodies, but there's a purity there. The spirits are super suffering, super intense, like hungry ghosts, they call one group of them, you know. But all the ones that, like, people hear voices and people see spirits sometimes, very harmful, can be very destructive, cause a lot of harm on this earth. They cause weather problems and sicknesses. A lot of sicknesses are caused by the presence of harmful spirits, they say. It's just according to the Buddhist thing, you know. Then you've got hell realms. Just like, you know, Dante said, and all the Christians say, and all the different religions all talk about hell realms, hell beings, okay? So the point in Buddhism is these aren't places where you're sent, which is how we think about it. If you're a good girl, you get sent to heaven. If you're a bad girl, you get sent to hell. But no one sends you anywhere, like we're talking. So if you think of it like this, I find this a helpful way to imagine how there can be different realms of existence. If we think the universe is pervaded by minds, wherever universe exists, whatever we mean by that. And then there's matter, which is the elements. So as Lama Zopa points out in the Kala Chakra Tantras, there's very detailed descriptions of the intimate relationship between the internal, which is mind, energy, and the external, which means the body and the external world. So as he sort of said it roughly one time, when there's delusion in the mind, which is the imbalance of the mind, that causes the imbalance of the physical energies, which we call sickness, which in turn impacts karmically over a long time upon the external world. So here we are sitting, this is environmental karma. So here we are sitting in this universe, around this area here. Okay, it's not when the earthquake happened, so at the moment though it's peaceful. The weather's peaceful. The elements are fairly harmonious, wouldn't you agree? It's not too hot or too cold, and the trees are quite pleasant, and there's not too much sound, and the taste of the water's not too bad. And that's the result. In other words, the elements behaving themselves, coming together and behaving themselves in a certain form. It's not from their own side only the physical laws. It's not God pulling the strings. It's the collective karma of us, sentient beings, experiencing this environment. So you could say at the time of the earthquake, whoever was here at that time, when the elements went berserk, that's the collective karma of certain of actions from maybe 1,000 lives ago that all the sentient beings who experienced it created. So by the same token, you've got the God realms, which is just a karmic appearance of bliss, and like people talk about heaven. It's the karmic appearance of those sentient beings. And their subtle physical energies are manifesting as subtle light and radiant, blissful things. Because mind creates everything. Mind creates things. And then the elements form into that shape that our minds have created. The elements are just this essenceless stuff, inert, that have no power from their own side, unless there's the presence of minds. Minds and karma are what give power to the elements. This is the Buddhist way of saying it. They're just inert. There's nothing powerful about elements. But they turn into this shape or that shape depending upon the collective karma, or the individual karma, depending, of a sentient being. So there's this direct relationship between minds and even the external universe. So this universe, we think is so self-existent, is made by our minds. Collectively, we all worked in the past to act certain ways, and so now it's manifesting as the elements appearing this way and that, behaving this way and that. So hell realms. As Lama Yeshe said, hell is not some place where the devil is waiting saying, ha ha, I'm waiting for Lama Yeshe. It's the manifestation of the negative energy of that sentient being manifesting in what they call the experience of hell, which is always depicted as like fire and things and intense suffering. So there's all these sort of anecdotal stories. There's one story about this Christian doctor. You look on the web, I think, you'll find it. There's a film he made, somebody pointed out to me years ago, called To Hell and Back. It's not the movie that made in the 50s with Eddie Murphy in it. Audie Murphy. That's right. I remember that movie. This is To Hell and Back. And what it is this Christian doctor started interviewing these different patients and discovered they had near-death experiences, but they weren't the nice light ones. They were hell-like. terrifying experiences. And this is what Buddha's saying, we create these experiences by our mind. So things appear to us in a certain way. So this is exactly his point. Bottles appear to us due to our karma that way. People appear to us that way. Elements appear to us this way due to our actions. So this story, I get two stories mixed up actually, but it doesn't matter. This one guy who said he was mean and ugly to his wife and kind of just was a mean, ordinary guy, you know, and he was in hospital waiting for his operation on his heart. He was really worried about this operation. He was lying there. And the next minute he finds himself standing next to his wife by the bed and he's talking to her and she doesn't listen to him. And he gets angry with her. And then he looks over at the bed and he realises it's him in the bed. He's left his body. So then he hears voices in the hallway. Come on, John, come on, come on. So he thinks, oh, good, they're going to take me to my operation. And he's really anxious about it. So he goes out. And he goes along with them, and they're kind of slimy nice. Come on with us, John, come on, come on. And he's worried about it because he never gets there. And he said this journey along that corridor took longer than walking from here to Alaska. Wherever here was, it must have been, you know, we know Alaska, wherever you are, is quite far away, even Canada. So it means the time, the sense of time. And this is an interesting point when we think about time. It's a very subjective experience, isn't it? This experience for him, and I bet his mind couldn't have been out of his body more than a few minutes before you become brain dead, you know. So there he is. So he's walking along this corridor, terrifying, and they're suddenly get meaner and meaner to him, and they're ripping out his flesh and abusing him, and it was the most terrible experience. And then they leave him, and he said it was this absolute darkness, this despair, the likes of which he'd never known, and he didn't know what to do. So he just said, I better pray. So he tried to start praying, Our Father who art in heaven, and he couldn't go any further. He forgot. The Lord is my shepherd. He couldn't go any further. And then he just called out from his heart, Jesus, help me. From way over, tiny pin of light. And it comes, getting more powerful, more all-consuming. And he said if it had been an ordinary life, it would have consumed him. So then it comes, and it's Jesus, of course, completely embracing him with this bliss and love, and it heals him completely. So, of course, he's really happy. He wants to go off with Jesus. He's never had anything so nice, you know. But Jesus says he's got to go back. So he's very miserable until he makes a deal with Jesus, or Jesus makes a deal with him and says, you know, he'll be there for him. Now, the point is, if we can imagine there is such a thing as mind that does exist, that isn't physical, that can become perfect and pervade the universe, right? Then whatever form it manifests in is for the sake of sentient beings. So this guy had karma with Christianity. So if you know, it'd be a bit of a shock if Tara appeared to him, the Buddha, you know. Who's this dude, right? But it comes in the form of Jesus, which he's familiar with. So he's created that with familiarity. You imagine Jesus over your life, think Jesus, Jesus, so then there's Jesus, you know. Hell beings. So hell beings the same. So there's the other story. This other guy is also mean to his wife and ugly, and he was a bit of an alcoholic. And his story was, he had a near-death experience, and he finds himself walking along this long corridor, and instead of at the end being this blissful light like everybody talks about, it was like this conflagration. It was hell. Hideous burning fire, and all his friends were there, screaming at him, don't come here, go away, go back, you know, all his drinking buddies. So he wakes up and he vows to lead his life to benefit others and whatever. So these are all, what Buddhism would say, everything we experience, including this human life and blue bottles, are our karmic appearances. They don't have an inherent nature of being out there from their own side, made by a superior being who plonks us in there, which is the dualistic way we think. They're all the appearances of our mind from habit and familiarity. There are the elements that have no power from their own side, and then there's mind. Mind gives power to the elements, so then they form in that way. So hell is all the cliched way how we think about fire, you know, and you read the Buddhist texts and things, is the same. So I remember one time, Lama Zopa was in India, and my friend Jane was his secretary, and she said he called him in one time. He called her in, and he had a glass of chamomile tea, and he said, there is a hell being there. And she said, oh, Rinpoche, it's just the chamomile tea, you know. There is a hell being there. So if you think of this, wherever there are the four elements, that is a conducive environment for minds to go there. So due to karma, a mind, due to killing, strong energy of anger, and look at anger, it's like fire energy, you think about it, it's powerful, destructive, consuming, explosive. You think about it. So that's going to affect the elements, your elements for a start, your wind energy. So then when you die, that mind, propelled by that killing habit, will run, you could say, to the element of heat and fire. You could say like that. And then it manifests in that experience for your mind. I mean, this is just my way of saying it, you know, based upon this idea of the 4 elements and the mind. And everything is made by our minds. So from that perspective, it's real. It happens, it occurs, you experience it. But you created that bed. You made that bed and now you're lying on it. You created that. The fire, you didn't make up the fire energy, it's existing. The elements exist. No one makes them. But there's this intimate relationship between the elements and one's own mind. And our mind affects the elements, causes the elements to turn into this or that. So, how does that help?
It does. But part of my question is a splinter from that, and it relates to the human existence on this planet.
This planet.
Literally.
Here we are. Okay, then.
So if you look at those elements being present, earth, wind, fire,
Okay.
in our limited or ignorant or naive existence, we tend to want to go look outside this planet for some other beings like ourselves.
That's right. Yep.
I
So
don't
then-
know, maybe a
No,
feeling
that's
of
true.
belonging or whatever the motivation is.
That's right.
My question relates to, from a Buddhist thinking, if you look at these different realms that you just talked through, is there discussion about this human realm existing outside in another universe, in another, because they're all endless and ever going?
Okay, the way to say that would be in this, we have the karmic appearance of this universe of stars and moons a long way away, don't we? That's our karmic appearance. But right here, right now, pervading space, there are other beings and these elements are appearing in a completely different way to them. That's a way to say it. So you could drive for 1 million years and you probably won't come to the end of the universe. But then if you get born next life, 1 second later when you die, as a hell being, you could say it's here in theory, but the elements are appearing in a most distorted way to you. Sort of as if we're both in the same room, but I'm completely wacko. I'm really insane, paranoid, seeing demons come out of your eyes, and you might as well be in another. You are in another universe. What you're seeing, what you're experiencing, is absolutely not your karma. We've got the collective karma to see a blue bottle. So they use this example. They say you can have the basis called liquid, a God being who has a blissfully pure mind and subtle physical energies. If they were perceiving that, they would perceive it as unbelievable, radiant, blissful nectar and would get just the experience of bliss just by tasting it. We will see it as water. A predator or a hungry ghost will experience it as pus and blood, like disgusting. So there are the elements. There is reality. This is what, but according to your mind and your karma, it appears to you in a different way. That's the way to say it. So in that sense, we all make up our reality. But within that, it's real. Not real out there from its own side, in the sense that we think it is, which means it's got nothing to do with me. There are the trees out there, and what's it got to do with me? Everything to do with you. You made them. That's the meaning of emptiness, really, interdependence. Everything's our own karmic appearance. What we see and experience is not separate from us and our past and our mind, whereas we think it is. Who does Sandy think she is punching me? I'm an innocent victim. That's an impossibility. You see what I'm saying? Anyway, like that again. Yeah. So, people? Yes, sweetheart. Mike. Yes, give the mic. Mike, darling, here, please.
It's not a big question. What happened with the hell being Lama Zopa?
Ask in the mic, sweetheart. Yeah?
Can you let us know what happened to the hell being in Lama Zopa?
Oh, Lama Zopa and Jane did lots of prayers for it. I don't know what happened. They did prayers for it. But there's another story about hell, a type of hell being, again showing this point that wherever there are the elements, you could say that it's a conducive environment for the birth of minds. There's this other long, rambling story that these Tibetans have these long, rambling stories. They're like wonderful, they're like soap operas, And there's one about this great Indian master, Indian yogi, who was clairvoyant. And he sees with his mind that his mother had died and was born in Tibet he was in India, in the hearthstone of the fireplace of a Tibetan family. Okay? Remember, wherever there are elements, there are minds. There are countless minds right here, now. We just don't see them. So, it's a long story about how he gets himself to Tibet, you know, and then finds this family and then works for them. And then when he leaves eventually, he doesn't want pay, he just wants that hearthstone. So he can then do his work on doing what they call transferring the consciousness. He does all his prayers and stuff to help that consciousness of his mother be removed from that environment. So they would sort of say that's like a vague kind of like a spirit realm, hell realm, / They kind of they cross over, you know. Born so that during the day probably when the fire wasn't on, maybe, there was no suffering. But at night, the heat, that's how they talk, you know. So it was like a hell, that was like a hell realm. That is what they mean by a hell realm, you could say like that. Karmic appearances of every sentient being, created by our minds. This is the one. Yeah. So what time do we finish? We're finishing at 4, so I've got to think about what I want to try and conclude here, what we have to talk about.
This morning you talk about the, you actually using the bottle to do example, talking about the complete inhibited illusion and the material. You were saying that the best place is the middle. I think I like that, but I wasn't quite getting. Would you give us a couple more examples of how, so I can practice more in life of my point of view?
Yes.
Thanks.
The way Buddha's saying is that instinctively within our minds, we make these very fundamental mistakes in the way we see the universe, ourself and everything else. This is the deepest mistake, the deepest delusion, the deepest neurosis. And it's so subtle, it's very hard for us to even begin to see that we're doing it. It's so instinctive, right? So that is that we grasp, generally speaking, we grasp at everything as this solid, rock-solid, unchanging, permanent, inherent thing. Me, you, good, bad. And that's the one extreme that we have, the extreme of what they call eternalism, seeing everything as permanent and solid and unchanging. That's even the meaning of what they mean by what a soul is, which is why Buddha says things don't exist like that. So then we hear that everything is empty of existing from its own side, Buddha would say. So then as soon as we hear that, though, we go too far again, and we make it, the extreme view is when we hear, oh, everything is empty, we'll go, oh, well, nothing matters. It's all empty anyway. It's all an illusion. Doesn't matter. You with me? That is a complete mistake. It's the wrong conclusion to come to. So, middle way, the middle way view is that things do exist, but they're completely empty of existing from their own side. Things do exist, but they have no inherent nature. Things do exist, but they exist merely in dependence upon causes and conditions. So we have to cultivate the habit of thinking that phenomena, I and everything else, are empty of existing from their own side. And when we hear that, to refrain from going too far and chucking the baby out with the bathwater and getting all nihilistic, oh, therefore nothing matters. That's not the point. In fact, because things are empty, they do matter. So that means whenever you think, I am so, come on, Robina, relax. Nothing from its own side. I am empty, existing from its own side. That bad, that good. Everything doesn't exist from its own side. Everything is empty. Then that I consciously have to think. I go towards this middle way to the other view, and I think it's being empty. Doesn't mean, oh, therefore it doesn't matter. It actually means it does matter because it does exist. It is dependent arising. So then what happens is every time we think, oh, well, it's dependent arising, then we grasp at it and we make it more than it is, and we grasp at it as eternalistic. And then we make too much of it, and that's the other extreme. So then we have to constantly contemplate that things are existing in dependence upon causes and conditions. Things exist in dependence upon their parts. Things exist finally in dependence upon the mind labelling them. This is dependent arising. So when we think that, instead of going to the extreme of thinking, oh, well, they do exist, self-existent, we consciously go towards the middle way, and then we say, something's being dependent arising means it is empty of existing from its own side. And whenever we think it is empty of existing from its own side, we say that means it is dependent arising, because these two actually are meaning the same thing. One, like flip sides of the coin. When we hear them now, they seem completely separate. And our mind goes rushing off here and rushing off there. We grasp frantically at everything being perfect and good, and now it's self-existent, and then we go crashing down to the nihilistic view. Oh, well, nothing matters. And if you think about it emotionally, attachment is the up mode. Everything existing, permanent. Wow, finally I found happiness. Finally I'm happy. Finally I've got the best job. Now I've found happiness. And you kind of go and you lock it into permanence. You with me? And then we have all this hyperventilating excitement about it. That's the eternalistic view. It isn't accurate. So then the bubble bursts and we go crashing down, and then we think, utter despair, nothing matters, who cares? That's the nihilistic one. So we, emotionally speaking, we have these two views in our mind all the time. We're going between these two. And this is the way of philosophically putting it, to ground us. Don't get overexcited about everything, but don't get depressed about everything. Because the nihilistic view is the view of depression. Nothing matters. The eternalistic view is the view of attachment. Get overexcited about it. Grasp at it. You're sort of seeing what I'm saying? So we've got to keep ourselves, not to become kind of indifferent, not that, but realistic. So it is existing, but don't grasp at it. It is empty of existing from its own side, but don't get depressed about that. Because finally, when we understand and we've got the middle way, when we hear emptiness, we hear dependent arising. When we hear dependent arising, we hear emptiness, because finally they mean the same thing. Okay, it's Lynn. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Have you talked about the Vajrasattva practice over the weekend?
We did it last night.
Okay, good. Using that little book that Lama Zopa has on Vajrasattva practice, he always ends it up with a meditation on emptiness and
right.
on dependent arising.
Yes.
And you helped me with this on the pilgrimage, as a matter of fact. 'Cause one of the things that happens for me when I do that, I'm going, this feels soothing. And I'm kind of understanding now for the first time that one of the things I do when I recognize and take responsibility in the evening for misdeeds I've noticed that I've done. First of all, I like to go into fur out and not recognize that I've done whatever. But then trying to apply, okay, that misdeed I did, instead of making it real dramatic and what a bad girl I am.
You say it's empty.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know if I was doing this properly, because it's like, oh, well, it was a shitty thing to do, and there will be karmic results unless I purify this deeply. But it's also, it wouldn't have happened if all these other things weren't going on too. In other words, I take responsibility, but somehow it's soothing, it's relaxing somehow. And I'm wondering if I'm thinking of that correctly.
You mean seeing it as empty is relaxing?
Yes. And am I thinking, am I doing something wrong here in the way I'm thinking?
No, you're not. Because when we have guilt, which is the eternalistic view, it's concrete, it's permanent, it's real, and I'm bad. That's it. Paralyzed. Can't move. Isn't it? Or the other extreme is, oh, it doesn't matter. No one saw it. Who cares? That's the nihilistic view about it. So recognizing it realistically, I did kill, I did lie, I did steal. That's a fact. But don't over-exaggerate it. It isn't the whole of you. It is a series of causes and conditions, and you can pull the seed out. That means it's empty of existing from its own side. So negativity is empty, positivity is empty, good is empty, bad is empty. Everything is empty of existing from its own side, because everything is existing in dependence upon causes and conditions. So it should lighten the mind, yeah, but not to the point where you're saying, oh, therefore it doesn't matter. That's extreme. That's too much. And the other one is, oh my God, I want to kill myself, I'm so bad. That's too much. So it's this miraculous place, like I talk about Harry Potter's 9 3/4, it's like that, because we're swaying madly between these two concrete views. The nihilistic, depressed, doesn't matter. The grasping, oh my God, either it's so bad, oh my God, it's so good. we're extreme views, is what Buddha's saying. They're always extreme. And this is deeply ingrained. Until we've realised emptiness, this will never go. This is why to practice, the more you can realise it's empty, the more easy it is to take responsibility for it, because the more you realise you can change it. And it doesn't define you. That's it. Absolutely. So let me just think. What should we talk about between now and 4 o'clock? I think we should talk about the compassion wing. Okay? So what we've been talking about until now is how to sort of put yourself together. The main emphasis here is on you recognising your own suffering, looking inside yourself, taking responsibility, realising you're the cause of it mainly. It's you are the main one, because that's the one you can change. This doesn't mean that Fred didn't punch you. None of that's the point. But we're looking at our part in it, trying to strengthen our own courage to know I can change it. That karma and my delusions are the main source of my suffering. So you're really becoming your own therapist. You're really going deep inside. You're really looking at yourself. And as I said, every single day you're emphasising, you're noticing what's arising in your mind, not just noticing what's happening out there, which is how we spent our life. In this way, really developing yourself, developing courage, becoming a better human being, more grounded, less neurotic, more kind, more wise, becoming all the things you want to become. And this is the method. So now what's happened? Consequences of this are, 1, you're happier. Wow, fantastic. You have every right to be happy. This is the method for getting happy. But the other byproduct of this is the rats and roaches and human beings will thank you because you've stopped harming them. What a relief. They can get a life, you know. I've even heard, actually, it's wonderful, I've heard of somewhere I was, I can't remember where I was, somewhere in the States, and someone was telling me, or maybe it was in Montana, there's some friends of some people there, I think, who don't kill. They have a property and they don't kill. So in the deer killing season, all the deer come and stay on their property. Because they know they won't get killed there. Isn't that amazing? They just stay there, hanging about, you know, all the hunters are furious. And then when hunting season's over, they go back again. That's really good, isn't it? Isn't that great? So, you know, all the deers and the rats and the roaches and the humans will thank you for working on your mind. They will thank you so much because you'll become a better, nicer person. So now you're ready, you're qualified to do the real work, which is now you get out there and start to benefit others. You put your money where your mouth is. So, of course, you don't go do the wisdom wing perfectly and then go. You're doing each of these steps every single day, but you've got to know where you're at in terms of which one you've got to do more. 1 minute, you're going to be doing the wisdom wing, back off and mind your own business and work on your own mind. Another moment, you're going to be reaching out and helping another. But your capacity, the point is this, your capacity for benefiting others is dependent upon the success in the wisdom wing. And it's not rocket science. If we were talking about learning music here, you know very well you can't lift a finger to teach someone even one note of music if you don't know how to play music. So if you haven't worked on your anger and your jealousy and your depression and your fears and your rest of the stuff, how can you help others help themselves? You cannot. You know, you're two people drowning together. So the wisdom wing is the way you get happier and wiser and more powerful and more marvellous, but it qualifies you to help others now. So to the extent that you've achieved anything, is to that extent you can help others. What happened there? Someone talking to me? Okay, good. Okay, good. So then there are these methods, of course, all these methods for developing this love and compassion. You could summarise really the whole compassion wing into the development of love and compassion, which then culminates in this thing called bodhicitta. So bodhicitta is not equivalent to love and compassion. To be very precise, let me say precisely what it is. Bodhicitta is an aspiration, really, that goes like this. I must become fully developed, become a Buddha. I must become a Buddha. And so there's a reason. Like we said, there's always a motivation. It's an intention. And your reason is what? Because look at the suffering of sentient beings. It's unbearable. So it's based upon your compassion for others and your love. So this whole compassion wing, there's different methods for developing it, and there's one particular method of combining two main traditions that comes into 11 different points that culminate in this accomplishment of bodhicitta. So it goes back, you know, bodhicitta, this huge aspiration that fires you up to then focus on becoming a Buddha for as long as it takes, is based upon the recognition of this unbearable suffering of all sentient beings, without exception. And so that's called great compassion, because it says, also called compassion, which comes earlier than great compassion, says, oh my God, look at that suffering. It is unbearable. Then you develop this great compassion which says, it is my job to take it away. What can I do to make it better? That is the unique characteristic, actually, of the compassion wing, of the bodhisattva wing. When you're just doing the wisdom wing, they call that the Hinayana path or the Theravadan path, you know. And you become your own Hinayana Arhat, as they call it, your own enemy destroyer. You've accomplished the goal of your liberation. They call it individual liberation. If you just did the wisdom wing, that's what you'd accomplish. You'd remove all the seeds from your mind, you'd perfect your realization of emptiness, and then when you die, your mind would go into bliss. Okay? So in this progression of achieving your own liberation, what you're doing, just like we talked, is getting rid of all the delusions, all the seeds, and you remove them all from your mind. To the point where, at a certain point in that life, you've realized emptiness, and then you'll perfect that. And so, by then, you're going to have no, you're going to be free of all the neuroses, free of delusions. So you're going to be what kind of person? It's very obvious. Happy, wise, loving, kind, blissful, compassionate. How could you not be loving and compassionate? You don't have ego any longer. So you're going to be an amazing person, full of love and compassion. But the point is this. For life after life, your main motivation for spiritual practice has been the wish to get liberated, the wish to be free of suffering. I must get out of samsara. I must get out of suffering. This is unbearable. And this is renunciation, and we all need it. But it's not the final motivation. So that motivation, it's like a beacon that guides you through your lives. And at some point in one life or other, you're going to get that realization, and you will achieve your own nirvana. So when you die in that life, that motivation for countless lives is like, has trained your mind to then zap into bliss. So that bliss and that aspiration for your liberation will override any love and compassion you've developed, which you will have developed, to benefit others. That'll override it. So you'll go into bliss for eons. Then they say Buddha comes along and taps you on the shoulder and says, okay, honey, now time to get back onto the bodhisattva path and come and become a Buddha so you can manifest to benefit sentient beings. This is how they talk. So if you're doing the wisdom wing in conjunction with the compassion wing, your motivation is a more expansive one. Your reason, the beacon that guides you from life to life, is this, in the beginning, just pretend, aspiration to become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Which means, practically, that, when you've achieved all these things of wisdom and all the rest and removed the seeds from your mind, you don't need to be reborn either. You've cut the motor of having rubbish old rebirth. But your motivation of bodhicitta must become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings, must become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. And the development of this unique characteristic of the compassion of the bodhisattva wing, the great compassion, the one that says it's my job to do it. That's an extra component to compassion that puts you in a position of responsibility. His Holiness sometimes used to call it universal responsibility. Then that great compassion, it's my job to do something about it, which propels and fuels your bodhicitta. That motivation, when you are ready to die in that life, you've cut the motor for rebirth. You don't need to be reborn, but that will automatically cause your mind to take another rebirth. Many rebirths by this point, because bodhisattvas can manifest their minds in many forms simultaneously. So this motivation is huge. Starting off small, of course, pretend. Of course it's pretend in the beginning. But it's what causes you to do it. So this is a simple thing, this motivation, this bodhicitta idea, but we can make it a bit complicated. So let me use a simple example. Like I was saying, you go to Nepal, you go up to the mountains, and you see all these people who've got cataracts. They're suffering, okay? They're suffering. This is an analogy, but it's really trying to explain the meaning behind bodhicitta motivation, what that means, how you bring it into your daily life. You see all these people with cataracts, and your heart is full of compassion. Oh my God, these people, it's unbearable. And this is what great compassion, then you think, what can I do to help? It's like, that's great compassion. Great compassion. Oh my God, look at the suffering of the entire universe. What can I do to take it away? This is the great compassion I'm talking about. In this way we're talking here, the Buddhist path. So with the cataracts, you go, what can I do to stop this suffering? And then you go, oh, I'm not a surgeon. I can't do it. I'm not qualified. So in the Bodhisattva path, you go, I'm not qualified. I can't see the minds of all beings perfectly. I can't diagnose exactly all their situation. I'm not fully developed yet. So what do you say? I must go back home to Santa Cruz, go to the university, and become a surgeon. That's bodhicitta. I must become a Buddha as quickly as possible because then I'm qualified. So then that motivation, I must become a surgeon, causes you to get on the aeroplane, to go home, and by the next day you haven't forgotten your motivation. Oh, why am I in Santa Cruz? Oh, I'm going to go to the toilet again. No, you don't forget your motivation, do you? You're propelled by that compassion for these people. Every day it causes you to study for the next 7 years. You never lose sight of your reason for becoming a doctor. Are you hearing my point, people? That propels you. You're not a surgeon yet. You can't pretend you are. But you're saying, I must become a surgeon every day. That calls you to get up, go to the school, do your studies. You never forget. You're looking in your books and you've got these suffering people in Nepal in your mind, like your precious children whom you have to help, who are relying upon you to become a surgeon so you come back and pull their cataracts out. That's bodhicitta. So if you don't have that much compassion when you get there, let's say you see them, oh, these poor people, but you're overriding still, you're driven mainly by your own attachment and your own needs. You can have a little bit of kind of small compassion, but the next minute you're worried about yourself again, isn't it? So, you can only have compassion to the extent that you don't have neurosis and ego, which is why you do the wisdom wing. And when you've really got that compassion focus, it's super focused and you've practiced for years and lifetimes, we're talking here, to get to that level of great compassion. It's as stable, as solid as a rock. It's grounded in you. It's a genuine insight. It's a genuine compassion. You've actually got it. Then you will never forget your bodhicitta. Every split second that you go from life to life to life, being an old hobo down the street, a homeless person, becoming a multimillionaire, being a mother, you can go from life to life doing many different things, looking like an ordinary person. But in your mind, you've never forgotten. Why are you doing this? Why am I getting better at emptiness and better at compassion and developing? Because I want to be a Buddha for the sake of all these suffering sentient beings. That's what bodhicitta is. It drives you. So of course for us now, we haven't got that much compassion, so we'd have to keep saying it. You fake it till you make it, basically. So you state the bodhicitta as your motivation for why you do your practice. You state your bodhicitta as a motivation for why you eat your dinner. Like he said, of course you're going to have mainly self-cherishing there, but give yourself a break. You can't be perfect first. You've got to start small. And you remind yourself every day. So if you remind yourself every day, you'll just get used to it, and it will become. And this is the point. Reminding yourself every day is one of the main causes to become it. So does that make sense, people? Okay. So, what is this compassion, great compassion, love, and how do you get it, Well, first of all, I have to say again and again, we have these mystical ideas of what we think love and compassion are. We think they are a big fat feeling, don't we? So then we think spiritual practice means you get a feeling one day, a big insight, a big feeling. Oh, I had an amazing meditation today. This feeling of love for the whole world. And I'll say, great, please replicate it. Oh, I can't do that. It just came and went, Well, that's like sitting down at a piano, putting your hands on the piano, and suddenly playing a very nice piece. Right? You with me? And then I'll say, oh, great, please play it again. Oh, no, I can't do that. It just happened. Well, that'd be a bit dumb, wouldn't it? You see what I'm getting at here, people? If you can't do it every time, then you don't really know it. You haven't really done it. Little flashes come, of course they do. We know that flashes come, but that's what we think a spiritual practice is. It's like flashes and moments of insights. We're so mystical about it, superstitious, basically. So like with piano, you've got to practice it every day. You have the laws, you have the methods, you learn them, and then you practice rigorously so that you can go to the piano every time and play that marvellous piece. Love and compassion is exactly the same. You start small and then you practice thinking it day after month after year after life until it builds up into pure, actual love and compassion, such that you are like that all the time. It's a progressive thing. Just like learning music or anything else that we understand in our culture, this is the Buddhist approach. It's a methodical, step-by-step, doable progress, It starts with your thoughts. So there's this way of presenting. It's like, like I said, 11 little techniques that culminate. The 11th, the culmination is bodhicitta. So the first one is this practice of equanimity. And this is just 11 little techniques, but once you get the hang of what you're doing, you can use millions of ways of thinking, because that's all these techniques are. They're just ways of thinking, ways of interpreting the world. Buddha's all about seeing things differently. So you're continuing in a seamless way to practice on from the wisdom wing. There's no difference, there's no change in the way you're practicing, in the sense that you continue to work on your mind. But the emphasis is different. In the first wing, you're minding your own business and leaving people alone. You're learning to see yourself and take responsibility and change yourself. You're continuing here to change yourself, but your emphasis is others now. So equanimity is this very specific attitude, such that when you've developed it, is a heartfelt recognition that enemy, friend and stranger are the same, from many points of view, but in particular from the point of view of wanting to be happy. So we're not talking love yet. That comes about 4 steps later. We're priming our minds, step by baby step, to be ready to develop what's called love and compassion in this marvellous technique called Tonglen, giving, taking. But we're priming our minds, getting there. So equanimity, as I said, is this heartfelt, stable, when you've got it, you have to practice, recognition, every second. Enemy, friend and stranger are the same from the point of view of wanting to be happy. And what you're doing in all these techniques is using a lot of logic to argue with ego's very silly views. You've got to have the courage to want to break down ego's misconceptions. So like always, one level of practice we're discussing here is talking to yourself, arguing with yourself, breaking down ego's views, trying to see the foolishness of them in order to change the way you see things. So there are very many ways you can get this equanimity, different ways of looking, you know. So what is an enemy, a friend and a stranger? As we've talked already, if you look at these 3, there's no 4th category for sentient beings. They're either those that you're attached to, who we call friends. And what is a friend? By definition, it's a person or an animal or whatever that agrees with my attachment, that does what my attachment wants. Basically, it's that. An enemy, by definition, is a person who doesn't, who harms me, who disagrees with my attachment and does what I don't want. And then a stranger, you think about it, is a person who does neither harms nor helps me. So the response I have to the friend is this attachment, this over-exaggerating, hyperventilating attitude towards them that causes me to scratch their back in hopes that they'll scratch mine. An enemy is a person who, for whom I have aversion or anger. And a stranger, profound indifference, couldn't care less. They don't even come into my radar, They don't exist in my life. And that's 99.9999% of the universe. So it's quite embarrassing if you think about it. The views we have of the world, they're totally I-based. And we see the entire world without exception through the filter of these 3 delusions. There's no one left, either those you see with indifference, those you see with aversion, or those you see with attachment. You check, check, check. It's very embarrassing. Everybody does this. Dogs, humans, Americans, whites, blacks, males, females, carpenters, footballers. We all got our own little. We've all got my people. Me and my people fit under the heading of the friends, because they do what I want, agree with me, according to whichever one's important for me. If it's race, then all the white people are my people. If it's sex, the women are my people. If it's lesbian, lesbians are my people. If it's short people are my people. If it's Robinas, Robinas are my people. It depends on how you label it, So when I was a hippie, it was the straight people, and all the rich people, the hippie people. Then all the straight people were my enemy. Then when I was kind of into lefty politics, it was all the rich people were the enemy, and all my people were all the poor people. And then I was a feminist, all my people were the female ones, and all the men were the enemy. So I kept changing, We all change these labels all the time, don't we? One day you're a friend, next day you're an enemy, because, I changed my position and you've changed yours, and now I hate you. So we can see we run between these 3 all the time. All the time. That's it. That defines the world for us. And it's extremely narrow-minded, extremely kind of, it is in its nature self-centered. And it's not a reflection of reality at all. We're all making up our own stories, We can see this. So just even to see the objectivity like this, that this isn't, that these three people from their side don't exist like this. They're not in their nature friend, enemy and stranger. You argue with this. You see, well, you know, the person I was in love with last week is now my enemy. And look at the difference in the way I see them now. The person who was a stranger a week ago is now my best friend. We keep changing based upon how they affect my eye. So you sort of basically what you're trying to do here is step back, get yourself out of the equation. Step back and see them separately from you. Attempt to see them separately from you. And it doesn't take too long to see. But just because, you know, George Bush has politics that you don't like and does things you don't like, doesn't mean he doesn't want to be happy. It doesn't take too long to see that. But we don't want to see it, isn't it? Because we have this aversion and we're in our own comfort zone of thinking he is this. And what do you mean he wants to be happy? Who wants to go there? Nobody. But the second you do, it calms your mind already. It's a very different perspective. And this has got nothing to do with whether a person is good or bad. Nothing to do with that. It's not the discussion here. The discussion is a very specific one. It's that enemies, friends and strangers are equal in their wish to be happy. So why that one? Well, because what we're trying to do is develop love for them. And what is love? Love is the wish that they be happy. But so you can't love people if you don't think they want to be happy. But if you recognise they want to be happy, then you want them to be happy. So you've got to first establish that. And that's what equanimity is. We right now have enormous love for our friends. We do. We do want them to be happy. It's certain. We do enormous amount to help them be happy. But as Lama Zopa says, it's unstable. It's based on attachment. It's got strings attached, as we say. And then, of course, we can see as soon as they stop loving me, they're going to go into the enemy label now, and now I want them to suffer, you know. So very unstable right now, because it's based on attachment and aversion and indifference. So step back. Objectively see enemies, friends and strangers. From the point of view of wanting to be happy, there is no difference. That doesn't mean, of course, you rush off and live with your enemy or your stranger and leave your friend. Well, bodhisattvas might, but you don't have to. You've got a karmic connection with that friend. You go home to that friend still. But what you do is you change your reason for loving them. This is scary. You know, we're jumping ahead to love here, but you could think with your best friend, whom you do love now because you're attached to them and they do what you want. You could think, even if you give me up tomorrow, I will still want you to be happy, which is I love you. That's scary. So the reason we have now for loving someone is not stable. And the reason we don't love somebody is also not stable, because it's based on attachment. So equanimity, like I said, is this recognition of the truth of this. And it's very stabling, it's very grounding. And 1,000 times a day you could do this. Because you see your mind, you know, we're seeing these enemies, friends and strangers all the time, just instinctively. Even in this group, you know, wherever we go, if you really thought about it carefully, you think of those that you like, that you had a chat to and you got along with, those you maybe particularly don't like, perhaps people, you know. It's a bit embarrassed to admit it, I realise, but you look at your mind carefully. And then there's the rest whom you can't remember. You can't remember them. You'd never talk to them. They're strangers. We're doing it all the time. This is the way our minds just automatically divide. Enemies, friends and strangers. Enemies, friends and strangers. It's incredible. And it doesn't take long to have someone irritate you slightly that you think, you're putting them in the enemy label, basically. And those who agree with you, you find them fun, they're the friends, and they're the ones you don't care about. So, looking at this, it's kind of humbling. Step back. Just for now, for 1 second, in your mind, think of one person, and it's embarrassing, I know, in this room, whom we've got some aversion for, who's irritated us perhaps, you know. And just think. Come on, Robina, don't be ridiculous. Talk to yourself there and think, they want to be happy, just like the person I like. It's exactly the same. They're human, they want to be happy. They're the same as the person I like. Okay, then from this, you go to the next little thing to think about in this series of 11 little techniques. And this is just a numbers thing. You just got to get your calculator out, okay? It kind of sounds ridiculous for us, but we're trying to expand our minds here, and this is definitely going to expand our minds. This next step is to think, all sentient beings have been my mother countless times. So mother, because, you know, these Asian people are quite old-fashioned in saying that mothers are kind. Mothers take care of us. Mothers are a good example of a person who's nurtured us. So it's a good example to think of. Because, I mean, also, people have all been your daddy as well, and all been a dog, and have all been your enemy, and have all killed you countless times. But that's not the issue here. We're trying to find a way to think about, to go to the next step where we would say the mother is kind. Because you want to go to the next step where you say you want to repay their kindness, which is a natural conclusion. So if they've all been my mother, then they've all been kind. So I must repay their kindness. It's the thinking, you know. So let's look at the one about they've all been my mother. That's just the thinking about beginningless mind. If there are countless sentient beings and they're all the minds are beginningless, my feeling is if you could put numbers on that, if you could calculate that, you're going to find that everyone's been your mother countless time, a dog countless time, a bird countless times, etc. Like that in relation to you. That's the plan here, to get your mind expansive about it. And then to think about how the mother is kind. Well, I think we've got to do an extra special contemplation here to even prove that, because we think the exact opposite mostly, isn't it? But I think always first, I find this important, you think about what we usually mean by kind. I think already we make a big fault here. What we mean by kind is when someone does what I want. So it's based on attachment again. I mean, the person in the cafe works really hard to bring me the food, but because the food's crummy, it's not what I like, I will not thank her for her kindness. I'll get irritated, annoyed, want a discount on my bill, if not pay the bill altogether, and won't thank her and won't give her a tip, because I didn't get what I wanted. We know this ourselves. You can work really hard for your boss, put so much effort into it, and they don't like what you've done, so they don't thank you. You feel wounded. You know you made effort. In that sense, you're kind. But because you didn't do what they wanted, they don't care. So we can see how narrow our view is, you know, how self-centered it is about what we mean by kind. So I think also we add to this with our mothers the idea that we didn't ask to get born, that our mother actually decided to make us. So we have this huge sense of entitlement. She'd better take care of me. It's her job. She made me. It's her job. So we demand, we take it for granted, don't we? And then how dare she do things that are less than perfect? How dare a person not do what I want all the time? So we all blame and hate our mothers so often. It's common in our culture, isn't it? Well, I think this thinking about their making us reinforces that. So we think, why should I thank her, you know? She's a neurotic person, she's dominating. As if somehow there's an assumption there that she shouldn't be, because she's your mother. I beg your pardon. You know? She's not a human being like you, with delusions. We blame her for being angry. We blame her for having delusions. Like as if she shouldn't have them. It's a very odd assumption. So if you've got the Buddhist view that, you know, you create the cause to have that mother, already, my goodness, there's an acceptance of her. It's a very different view, you know. You've got this karmic connection with this person. And then all the more, even if she has harmed you, you'll be able to still see her kindness, because you'll realise if she's pretty neurotic, it's true. The person who harms you is a pretty neurotic person. Then the fact that you still managed to get an education and, you know, have your diapers washed and whatever happened and cleaned, your little bottom cleaned, and you got an education and got fed and you're still alive right now, she must have done a few things right. A few things. So then, you know, with our ego, we forget all those. We only remember the bad. And we build that up, it looms large in our minds. And so we say our mothers are mean, our mothers are this and our mothers are that. They might be this and that. But what makes you think they shouldn't be? What makes you think they're an exception and shouldn't have delusions? You're allowed to have them. Look how much you hate them. So we're kind of interesting how we think, I think. You know, if your mother even gave you away, you have a reason to never stop thanking her. She didn't abort you. I aborted a baby when I was 23. My sister Judy, when she was 17, was pregnant in the 60s. And we were trying to convince her, me and Janet, come on, Judy, have an abortion. It's easy. Come on, much better, you know. She didn't have an abortion. She gave birth to that baby, even at the risk of losing the boyfriend. Then she had it adopted and made sure it got a good family. And it was interesting. Over the years, she then was part of all the litigation in Australia that enabled adopted children to meet their parents and vice versa, you know. So she met this daughter eventually. And then eventually the daughter gave her up again and got mad at her and hates my sister and won't forgive her. Judy's heart was just broken. And I know the suffering she went through as the mother. She didn't have the abortion. She consciously did not want to kill that child. She made sure it had a good birth, good family. Heart is broken of sadness, you know, of loss. But all this girl, with her sense of entitlement and resentment, be bitter and angry at this mother because she gave her away. Well, there's another way to see it. I can see the different story. I can see Judy. There's a reason for this girl to be grateful to her mother, you know. Forget the karmic one, but she created a cause to get a mother who would give her away. So we're so blinkered in how we see things, and they're always, of course, self-centered. So there's every reason to be grateful to your mother, the fact that she didn't abort you. That she's still alive. How incredible. You should be in tears of gratitude every day. If someone saves your life once by, you know, jumping in front of a car to grab you, you'll never forget them. You'll be utterly grateful always. Well, your mother saved your life. She didn't abort you. She could have, if she gave you away. She could have aborted you, but she didn't. There's ways of thinking, ways of seeing things. So there's another way to think that's even more profound in order to develop this wish to benefit, a wish to repay the kindness of others, is to see that others, all others are kind to us, all others have been kind to us, all others are kind to us. And this seems a bit even more abstract than the mother being kind. But it's very, again, very logical and very reasonable. It's just that we never think it. So the way to think here, the meditation to do, the thinking to do, the analysis to do, is you just start with anything at all that you use in your life. You know, the simplest thing, your socks, a shirt, your underpants, a cup. You start to think about that thing, and you will never find the beginning of the beings who've been involved in the making of that thing. So, you know, when I buy my socks, I buy long blue socks, and I go to the men's stores because they have long socks, better than the ladies' ones. So, you know, I go to the men's store and I say, can I have some long blue socks, please? You know, so the gentleman will take me to the drawer, and I'll go look and open the drawer or see the hanger, and I'll see all the socks all laid out in sizes. Well, you know, first of all, but for that guy kindly taking me over to the socks, I'd be a bit lost, wouldn't I? Thank you, sir. Then I go to the socks. And I look at the labels. Well, a person wrote the words on the label. A person, like you. Someone typeset them, spelt them right, proofread them, you know. Someone checked the sizes to make sure what was on the label was accurate, so that when I look at it, I can help me to choose my sock. Someone made the little plastic hanger. Someone did the die cutting of the label. Someone made the cellophane. People, factories, human beings. Already you can't even count the number of beings who have been involved in this complicated process of having socks hanging there. Then you look at the socks themselves. You know, cotton, wool, polyester, whatever. But all the little sheep, all the humans who picked the cotton, all the creatures who died when they watered the cotton. And then the trucks. The people who drove the trucks took the cotton to the cotton factory where they wove it into cotton. All the people who did the weaving while they were sitting there feeling depressed and anxious and got constipation, weaving the cotton. If any one of those pieces was missing, you'd have no socks. This miraculous, complicated machine involving millions of beings is all working beautifully, so that the end result is you get a sock to put on your tootsie so it doesn't get cold in the winter. That's just a sock. Bodhisattvas are in tears already, totally overwhelmed by the thought of all these kind mother sentient beings who were involved in the making of their little sock. Well, everything in the universe is like that. The stuff that we all take for granted, that we feel entitled to get, because I bought it, it's my money. I'm allowed to have this, give me that. We have this massive sense of entitlement. Never think twice about the causes. Never think twice about the sentient beings who made them. And these are facts. You can't argue that humans didn't make socks. You can't argue that people didn't typeset the socks, the labels. It's a fact. We just never think it. Why? Because in the forefront of our mind is attachment, what I want, primordially self-centered. Like I said, if they give you a discount and make the sock a special thing, you're prepared to thank them. If she gives you an extra glob of cream on your cake and a discount, you're prepared to thank the waitress for her kindness, only because she gave you extra special what you want. It's just based on attachment again. We have this entitlement. You know, when I go to the supermarket to buy my Vegemite, the doors should be open, the floor should be clean, the people should make proper signs, the signs should be done, there shouldn't be long lines at the end, they should say thank you very much, have a nice day. It's all should. My attachment, talking, expecting like a vampire to get everything that I want, as if there's no cause of it and it's their job to do it for me. That's how we walk around life. That's the function of attachment. It's massive entitlement. Expectations, greed, basically. And so it blinds us from seeing these other facts. It blinds us from seeing countless sentient beings have worked to make every single thing we ever use, all the lunch, all the food, the carrots, the bottle, the keys, the clothing, the socks, the seat, the wood, the microphone, every single thing that facilitates our life, like a miracle. Humans do it, so they're kind. There's nothing wrong with that thinking. It's pretty amazing. Your heart softens immediately. Mm-hmm.
You said we have mind and we have body.
Mm-hmm. Give the mic, please. Mm-hmm.
You said we have mind and we have body.
Mm-hmm.
Where is ego? Is ego a part of mind? Is it a function of mind? Is it an
Ego
aberration?
is the name we give. I think it's a loose term, isn't it? We've sort of developed in the West since whoever it was who coined that term, taking from the Greek for I, right? I think it's just the loose way we talk about the grasping, the expectation, the kind of all the voices of ego, like the attachment and the anger and the self-centeredness. It's a broad term for that part of us, I think. It's the best way to say it.
So it's a broad term for
this is a term for the neurotic voices.
For certain functions of attachment.
Precisely. The attachment, anger, pride, all that rubbish. Ego is a name for that part of us.
Got it.
I think that's the way I'm using the term here. Best way to say it.
If I heard you correctly, last evening you used the term union oneness.
Oh, just the way Loving Yeshe often would say it. It's a sweet little term he would often say.
Well, it is a sweet little term, and I wondered if you could say more about it.
Mm-hmm. You could say, using these methods of developing wisdom and compassion, when you've accomplished them, you would say that your mind now having divested itself of all the neuroses and the pollution, literally encompasses all others. So you could argue for you, there's no longer a sense of separateness from others. You could argue that it's you are oneness with the minds of others. You could say that for sure. Your bodhicitta, your compassion, your love, your empathy, and your wisdom. Because the wisdom side removes the misconception of ego grasping that causes a sense of a separate self. And then the continuing to break down the barriers of this between self and other is accomplished by all these compassion techniques. So the culmination of when you achieve Buddhahood is that you have a sense of absolute empathy with every sentient being, as if they were not separate.
Do you think it is possible for those of us who have not attained that state to tap into that, to experience
Will you say
it,
that again,
touch
please?
it? Do you think it's possible for those of us who have not attained that enlightened state to tap into it, to experience it momentarily?
Yeah, momentarily, of course. It's like if you haven't achieved the ability to play that complicated piece by Bach yet, you can occasionally touch it, but you're aiming to do it perfectly, aren't you? So the aim isn't just to get a moment of it. It gives us a good taste. We can see, oh, wow, I can do it after all. But you just keep moving until you've accomplished it, progressively, step by step. But that is what Buddha says finally is our potential. It's one way of describing what our mind would be like when we've removed all the junk from it. Because this sense of separate selves now is the creation of all these delusions, that we've created these separate selves.
And so a union oneness would be the absence of a sense of a separate self.
Absolutely, yeah. And the way, okay, that brings us to really the particular technique we did last night, which is coming from this very vast body of practices in Tantra, in the esoteric teachings in Buddhism, where you do these practices related to visualizing the Buddhas. And then the extra component there is imagining that that Buddha is your own lamas, your gurus, your spiritual master's mind manifesting as a Buddha. And that's a technique to help us quickly develop this breakdown of the ego, because you use the spiritual teacher as a means to help you break down ego very quickly. The practice of devotion, in other words, is a very powerful method for helping us achieve very quickly this union oneness. Yeah. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. So maybe, sure, I don't know, time's running out, isn't it? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I've been really feeling throughout the weekend what it is to take the time to really feel, experience what a difficult state we are in on the planet, and you bring that really to the forefront. And yet, I witness great courage and encouragement and hope in you and your teachings. And I wonder if you can speak a little bit to what is it in you and what is it in the Buddhist, because does it matter to you that in your perception that we have not evolved, does that matter to you in terms of your work, or is that insignificant in terms of the overall goal of the end of all suffering, or how do you perceive all that? What gives you hope?
I understand exactly. All I can say is, okay, from the Buddhist point of view, the thinking right from the beginning about how every single mind has the innate potential to be perfect, to be fully developed, to be union oneness, to be beyond delusion. I think this is the most important for us in our culture. Because, we sometimes are so depressed and so hopeless and so nihilistic. Wouldn't you agree? And I do identify ourselves as so hopeless, and so we reinforce our hopelessness. And now why don't we go off and killing ourselves? I mean, the numbers of young people more and more killing themselves now is incredible, is unbelievable. The number of young people who are junkies, who are killing, who are dealing drugs. I mean, I'm not trying to be depressed. Looking at the extent of the suffering of our minds is unbearable, isn't it? But so what gives courage to never give up is the Buddha would say this absolute fact that mind in its nature is potentially perfect. That is the very thing that defines mind. So no matter how bad minds are, how much suffering there is, how much delusion there is, how much intensity of insanity, when you develop this recognition for yourself, it gives you the courage to continue to work on yourself. And then it gives you the courage to never give up helping others. So you don't despair. You don't have all these false expectations. You do one step at a time, everything you can, and knowing every single thing you do does count. Every person you have contact with, every person you smile at, every person you say hello to, every person you give a cup of tea to, every person you help, you make a karmic connection with them. And then if you've got this bodhicitta motivation, every day you're saying, you're building up this kind of connections with sentient beings. So no matter how long into the future mind goes, and minds are endless, you're going to meet them again. So you've got a long-term perspective. There's not this anxiety to try and make them all enlightened overnight. You've got countless lives ahead of you. This is the way they talk. So the bodhisattvas, they say, Dalai Lama said, bodhisattvas think in terms of eons. And he said also one time they have huge ego, meaning a vast sense of their self in the sense of it's being connected to others. So the more you work on the wisdom wing, the more you see your own potential, the more calm you become, the more brave you become, the more kind and wise and content you become. then that gives you the courage to be more brave in the face of other people's suffering. And then because you have an explanation of it all, all I'm saying is the Buddhist view here, and that makes sense to me, and I've always liked to have a big view. I've always liked looking for a world view, since I can remember for myself. This is my approach, we're all different, Ever since I was a little girl, I wanted religion. I wanted to develop the heart. And I felt devotion in the saints and God and Our Lady was a way for me. I mean, I was completely happy to be a Catholic. I had no problem with it. I never had guilt, right? But I wasn't happy with, I couldn't get answers. I had all these questions and I wasn't allowed to ask the questions because that was God's business, not mine. Do you understand? So the devotional side for me was huge, and I could see as a child the benefit of the devotional side. Having someone to revere, having someone we can look up to opens the mind. It's a very practical thing. We've got a human heart, and as Lama Yeshe says, we're dying to be loved. So for me, the relationship with God and Our Lady and the saints was a huge one. But interestingly, I never thought of God as my creator. That wasn't a thing for me. It was this sense of connectedness, yearning. Every Mass, every morning, I went to Mass every morning. I wanted to be a nun when I was 12. I was on my knees begging my mother to let me be a Carmelite nun like St. Therese, because I had all these aspirations and yearning and be at Mass every day, kind of yearning to be oneness with God, waiting for this feeling to come, I knew all the Mass in Latin. I'd go, but at the same time, it was completely internal. No one knew. I just thought everybody thought this way. But I was a naughty, wicked girl. I was always in trouble at the school, nearly getting expelled, and always trouble at home, and troublemaker. So it was deeply inside me, yearning for something, always wanting this to open my heart, to develop. But at the same time, too, wanting to understand why. Always this, always asking questions, always looking, reading and thinking. So by the time I got to 12, wanting to be like a nun, and my mother wouldn't let me be a nun, so I cried. And then when I became a nun 20 years later, she cried. Because I was a Buddhist nun this time. So then, by the time I was 15, I remember getting a record of Billie Holiday. I'll never forget the 7-inch LP at our school fair, and it said Billie Holiday. I said, who is he? But I was attracted, I don't know why. So that opened my whole mind up now, and gradually my spiritual aspirations sort of became social. Reading the whole Black American kind of thing, and jazz and all this opened me up, and then reading like Baldwin, James Baldwin, all these people. It was my method, my way into the world. From little insular 1950s Australian girl, into a Catholic school where we had one Jewish girl. She's a Jew, we said. Her name was Feinberg. I'd never heard of Jews. I never saw non-white people, even though there were some Aborigines living in Melbourne. So your life's very small, but your mind is big. You're looking for things. So then it opened up by the time I was 15. By the time I was 19, I had made a decision it was time to say goodbye to God and hello, boys, right? And drugs and jazz. I didn't like rock and roll. So then this kind of growing in my own mind, always looking for truth. So really developing a hippie philosophy, and then that fell short. It was too many contradictions, so that fell into sort of the lefty one, and all the kind of reading Lenin and Mao, and I found this just blissful. You can really see how they were affected, especially Mao, strongly affected by all the kind of Buddhist views. It was sort of interesting, But that found that contradiction, and then moving into the black politics, and then to feminist politics. And then all the time looking for a worldview, this is my mind, wanting a big picture, wanting it to answer, wanting a big picture, always sensing there must have been a big picture, but it can't just be this random event, At the same time wanting my heart to be fulfilled. So then I finally bumped into these Tibetan lamas when I was 32, I think. 32, yeah. 31 and a half, precisely. And then sort of coming home to it. By that time, given up sex, given up drugs, didn't give up jazz, given up cigarettes, and sort of, this is the nun I want to be. Thank goodness, finally found it, So I became a nun. And then just continuing to listen and study and think about all this stuff. So the two wings of the bird one, I use it all the time. It's a great analogy, Because up until then, I'd never looked at Robina even once. I wouldn't know what it meant. I tried to bash the world into shape, and I was pretty good at that. I can bash anything into shape, I promise. You understand? But I knew I couldn't continue to hate most of the human race. I had to start looking at Robina. So luckily these lamas came along into my life. What a relief, So then started the inner work of working on the mind, trying to understand the mind, and putting together this worldview. And all I can say is after 30 years or whatever it is now, I don't know how many years it is, so far so good for me, Making it my experience, ripping it to pieces, analysing it, not taking it for granted, not accepting a single damn word, but wanting to understand it, making it real, making it my experience. And at the same time, the devotional side, But that's sort of the best for me, the best place for that is internal. That's secret, that's private, you know. But it's absolutely central. I don't think I could be a Buddhist if I didn't have teachers, if I didn't have lamas, who are the object of my devotion. And I think devotion is a major one, but as they say, as Babonka Rinpoche says, you better choose your gurus very carefully. You're going to end up like them. So there's a really kind of a rigorous, very disciplined way of checking out the path and checking out the teachers. And then when you get your teachers, your main practice is one of union oneness, see them as the Buddha. Imagine that they are perfect. And this is the most powerful, practical way to cut down believing in your karmic appearances. So the devotion part's huge, you know, but it informs you from the inside. What comes out on the outside should be just something practical, you know, because it's very private. Anyway, I don't, you didn't ask me all that, I'm quite sure, but I answered. So maybe it answered your question, I don't know. Did it? Goodbye, darlings. See you later. So does that answer your question a little bit?
In eons.
Long-term view, long-term perspective. Got to have. I mean, you know, it's like, yeah, it's just the view I've got. It's the view that I'm using as the basis of my life now, this continuity of mind. So it's for each one of us, so far so good, to take first the inferential kind of logic of it and then to sort of take it as a hypothesis and then to keep working with it. And as long as it keeps working, you keep moving with it. As you say in Australia, if you're on a good wicket, you stick to it. On a good wicket. You stick to it, you know. It's true, isn't it, Big Crunch? A cricketer also. So, you know, so long term. And then I see people like Dalai Lama, and they give me courage to sort of, you know, and that's the real benefit of having a teacher in human form. They're the proof of the pudding, you know. So long-term perspective, you can kind of relax then. You can be very disciplined and focused and not waste time. But at the same time, you can have long-term perspective. And this is where we haven't talked much about the Bodhisattva path at all, but one of these ideas of the Bodhisattva one is that you go from life to life to life, hooking sentient beings, making karmic connection. So when you know that whoever you meet, you're going to meet them again. So even if they don't like you, you don't mind, because you know you've got them. There's a story of this Bodhisattva in this village. And he is just bopping around, because bodhisattvas are completely private. You don't know who they are. They don't walk around with halos, for goodness sake, you know. But they're going from life to life, accumulating their wisdom and their compassion wings, developing, heading towards their goal. And so what one of their jobs is, you know, if you have to benefit sentient beings, you've got to have sentient beings who see you and notice you. If nobody notices you, how can you benefit them? It's impossible. So they say the bodhisattvas go from life to life hooking sentient beings, meaning eyeball to eyeball contact. So there's one bodhisattva. He'd made contact with everybody in this village except for one old lady. And no matter what he did, she didn't notice him. And he couldn't leave her behind. That's terrible. Bodhisattvas, you know, they can't leave anyone behind. So he noticed that she had this beautiful garden. So he rode his horse through her garden, destroying it. So now she noticed him. She was as mad as hell, shaking her fist, shouting and yelling, and he was so happy. Because he got her. That means they'd have karmic connection, and in 17 lives' time, whenever she was ready, he'd get her and drag her to enlightenment. So as the Lama who told that story said, was Geshe Dagi, he said, when it comes to bodhisattvas, or Buddhas, it's better to have bad karma with them, like she did, than to have none. So then all the people who don't like you, rejoice. You got them. When you get enlightened, you lead them all to enlightenment. So it's just another way of saying. So then, you know, you go from life to life to life, connecting with beings. And there's this lovely prayer that says something like, whoever sees me, hears me, touches me, talks to me, smells me, tastes me, whatever, may they be of benefit just by my presence. So there's ways of benefiting. There's a multitude of ways of benefiting beings just by being there, giving them a cup of tea. Dogs, ants, you blow in mantras in their ears. You just got them. You'll meet them in 74 lives when they're ready to be led to enlightenment. How come we all love the Dalai Lama? I mean, we're in his thrall. He sits there for 8 hours a day teaching heavy philosophy that most Buddhists don't even understand. We don't mind. We sit there all glassy-eyed and happy. So that means he must have hooked us individually, very personally, over countless lives using very sweet methods. I think Lama Zopa Rinpoche, anybody who knows him, I think he must have used Rothel methods. Powerful methods. Because he freaks people out. He talks until 3 in the morning. You don't know what he's saying sometimes. You're freaking out. Your anger's rising. You're going crazy. Doesn't he know I'm tired? You're going crazy in yourself. I think he must have used very powerful methods to get us. I think he must have driven over our gardens, you know, to hook us. So there's many ways of benefiting sentient beings. So long-term perspective, you know, it's okay. Don't panic. Keep trucking. Never give up. That's the main one for me. Just keep moving. Never give up. Never give up. That's the one. Never give up. No matter how much despair, how much grief, how much hopelessness, no matter what, you lose your legs, you lose your arms, you lose everything. Just keep going. Don't give up. That's the one. That gives courage. I think courage is the one. Be brave. This for me is the hugest one. Isn't it?